She said it the way people say things they've already decided are reasonable. This year, with everyone coming, we're going to need the guest room for Jenna and the kids, so we thought maybe you'd be more comfortable out in the garage. Marcus already set up a cot and a space heater. I was standing in her kitchen at the time, the kitchen I'd helped pay for, not because she'd asked, but because Marcus had called me 3 years ago, when the renovation quote came in higher than expected, and I'd written a check without making a thing of it, the way you do for your children. I was standing in that kitchen with a casserole dish I'd been carrying for 3 hours, since 6 in the morning when I loaded the car in the dark, because it had to go in the oven before I drove, and Lena's oven wasn't preheated yet when I left. I looked at my daughter-in-law. Then I looked at my son Marcus, who was very focused on his phone. "The garage," I said. "It's actually really cozy," she said. Marcus hung some lights. "There's a rug." I took a slow breath. "How cold does it get out there at night?" "The space heater handles it," Marcus said, still not looking up. A space heater in a garage in December. I thought about that. Then I thought about the guest room, which has a real bed, and a window that faces the garden, and the blue quilt I've slept under for 6 Christmases, and which would now belong to Jenna, who I've met 4 times. "Okay," I said, "let me think about that." And I went upstairs, not to the garage, not yet, but to the guest room, the room that would shortly stop being available to me, and I sat on the edge of the bed with the blue quilt under my hands, and I made one phone call. 40 minutes later, I had a reservation at the Hartwell Inn, 12 miles away, on a road I'd driven past 100 times, a room with a fireplace, a king bed, and a breakfast that would be served to me by someone who did not think I belonged in a garage. I packed my bag. It didn't take long because I travel light and I've always known where things are. I came back downstairs. Marcus was still on his phone. Lena was arranging something on the kitchen counter, a centerpiece, it looked like, for a table that had no dinner to center. I kissed my son on the cheek. I told Lena the casserole needed 40 minutes at 3:50. I said I'd see them tomorrow for Christmas dinner. "Where are you going?" Marcus finally looked up. "I found somewhere more comfortable," I said. I watched something move across his face, not quite understanding, not quite alarm, something in between. "Mom, Merry Christmas Eve," I said, and I left. What happened in the next 18 hours is the reason I'm telling this story. Before I get to that, subscribe, right now. This channel is for every woman who has been handed a cot in a garage and a space heater and told to be grateful for it. Hit subscribe, then come back, because the rest of this story is worth every minute. My name is Carol Whitfield. I was 51 that Christmas, and I want to tell you something about the 6 years of Christmas that came before this one, because they're the reason what happened mattered. Marcus and Lena got married when he was 37. She was 35, a project manager at a firm downtown, organized and efficient in the way of people who run meetings for a living. I liked her. I still like her, which is why this story ends the way it does, and not some other way. But in 6 years of Christmas at their house, I had learned the rhythm of it, which was, I arrived a day early, I brought food that would be needed, I helped with the things that weren't getting done, and I slept in the guest room with the blue quilt that had been in that room since they moved in. Not once in 6 years did I arrive to find dinner handled. Not once. Some years the casserole was genuinely helpful because they'd been overwhelmed with work and hadn't gotten to the grocery store. Some years I think they could have managed without it. But I brought it anyway because it was the thing I could do, and showing up with something useful felt like the right way to arrive. My husband David died 4 years into this arrangement. Heart attack, sudden, the kind that doesn't give you a chance to prepare. That Christmas I drove to Marcus's alone for the first time, and Lena had put a poinsettia on the nightstand in the guest room without saying anything about it, just left it there, and that small thing made me cry, in a way I hadn't allowed myself to cry in front of anyone else. She knew what it meant to have something in the room that acknowledged you were going through something. I didn't forget that. So when she said the garage, I wasn't angry. I was tired. There's a difference. I want to tell you something about the Hartwell Inn before I tell you anything else, because it matters. I had never stayed there. I had driven past it 100 times on the road between my house and Marcus's, a converted Victorian on the edge of town, with white lights in the windows every December, and a porch that looked like a Christmas card. I'd always looked at it and thought, someday turned out to be the night my daughter-in-law assigned me the garage. The room was everything the outside promised. A real fireplace, not electric, with a small basket of logs already laid, and a box of matches on the mantel. A bed, with the kind of linens that make you understand why people spend money on linens. The thread count kind, the ones that feel like cool water. A window overlooking a garden that was bare in December, but had fairy lights strung through the empty branches, so it glowed in the dark outside my window, like something from a dream. I stood in the middle of it for a minute, just stood there, and felt something I hadn't felt in 6 years of Christmas at my son's house. I felt like a guest, a welcome one. I lit the fire. I changed into the pajamas I'd packed. I always pack good pajamas. It's a habit from business travel years ago. The idea being that wherever you end up, you should have something comfortable. I ordered dinner from room service, a thing I almost never do because it feels extravagant, and then I thought about the garage and ordered it anyway. A club sandwich and a bowl of tomato soup and a slice of the chocolate cake because it was Christmas Eve. I ate it in bed with a book open and the fire going, and it was one of the best meals I'd had in months, not because of the food, though the soup was excellent, but because of the stillness around it. No one needing anything, no one coming into the kitchen to ask where something was. Just the fire and the food and the book. I called Pat at 9 and we talked until 11, which we hadn't done on a Christmas Eve since our mother was alive, and we'd call her together and end up on the phone with each other for an hour after. Pat has lived in Phoenix for 20 years, and we talk often, but not like that. Not with the kind of time that doesn't have a reason to end. "Tell me about the room," she said, and I described it to her in detail. The fireplace and the garden lights and the soup. And she said, "I'm going to need the name of that place," and I told her. I slept 8 hours, straight through. I woke up to winter light coming through the curtains and the smell of wood smoke from the banked fire, and for a full 30 seconds, I didn't know where I was, and then I did know, and I stayed there in the good sheets and just breathed. In the morning, I had breakfast in the inn's small dining room, eggs Benedict and coffee that came in a proper pot, with a small pitcher of cream on the side, the kind of breakfast that takes its time. I opened the gift Pat had mailed me in November, a scarf she'd found at a market in Sedona, the softest thing I'd touched in months. I read another 2 chapters of my book. I watched the other guests come and go, a young couple who'd clearly been arguing and were now holding hands over the table, an older man who read the newspaper with the precise pleasure of someone who does it every morning, no matter where he is. I thought about whether to go to Marcus's for dinner at all, and then I thought about Sophia running across the room with her arms out, and I went. Here is what I walked into when I arrived at 1 in the afternoon. The casserole I'd brought the night before was the only thing in the house that was ready. The turkey Marcus had promised to start in the morning was still in its packaging in the refrigerator. The potatoes nobody had peeled were sitting in a bag on the counter. The pie I'd been told was handled turned out to be a pie nobody had actually bought. Lena's sister Jenna was sitting on the couch with her 3 children, who had not yet eaten anything because nothing existed to eat. Marcus was in a quiet conversation with Jenna's husband Derek about the turkey, both of them looking at it the way men look at things they have no idea how to fix. Lena was on the phone, and from what I could hear, she was trying to find somewhere open on Christmas Day that could deliver a full dinner to a residential address. On Christmas Day, my granddaughter Sophia, who is 8, saw me come in, and ran over with the full-body enthusiasm of a child who has been bored since 7 in the morning. "Grandma Carol, we haven't eaten anything," she said. "I see that, sweetheart," I said. I set down my bag. I took off my coat. I put on the apron I always bring because I always knew it would be needed, and I went into the kitchen. I want to explain something before I tell you what happened next. This is important. I did not save Christmas to prove a point. I did not cook dinner as a performance, or to make Lena feel guilty, or to engineer some dramatic moment where everyone realized what I contributed. I did it because there were 3 children in that house who had been up since 6 in the morning and hadn't eaten, and because the turkey was going to take 4 hours minimum, and because I know how to make a meal out of what's in a kitchen, because I've been doing it since I was 19 years old. I started with the turkey because the turkey was the problem. 4 hours at 325, stuffed, basted every 40 minutes. I found the herbs I needed in the back of Lena's spice cabinet. She keeps a good spice cabinet even when she doesn't cook, which tells you something about her that I find endearing. While the turkey went in, I set Sophia and Eli up at the kitchen table with the job of shelling the peas, which they found deeply important, and which kept them occupied for a solid 20 minutes, and then bored for another 10, during which Sophia ate a concerning number of raw peas, and Eli taught the baby to slap the tray of his high chair. By 2 o'clock, the kitchen smelled like Christmas. That specific smell, turkey fat and rosemary, and the sweetness of the caramelized onions I'd added to the pan, that smell does something to a house. It makes it feel inhabited in the right way. Jenna came in from the living room, following the smell the way people follow music, and leaned against the counter. "This is incredible," she said. "We were about to eat cereal." "Cereal on Christmas is its own kind of adventure," I said. She laughed. "I've been here since yesterday, and Lena kept saying dinner was handled." I stirred the gravy. "It is now," I said. I cooked because cooking was what the moment needed. What I was thinking about while I cooked was Sophia's face when she ran up to me, and my grandson Eli's socks with the little reindeer on them, and whether the baby, 14 months, pulling up on furniture, gumming everything, would try the mashed potatoes if I made them smooth enough. I was not thinking about the garage. I was not thinking about Lena, but Lena was thinking about me. I noticed it while I was working the turkey. She'd gotten off the phone, the delivery option having apparently failed, and she came to stand in the doorway of the kitchen, watching me, the way people watch someone do something they should have done themselves. "I can help," she said finally. "Potatoes," I said. "Can you peel?" She could, sort of. I showed her the rest, and we worked side by side without saying much, and I noticed that when she thought I wasn't looking, she kept glancing at me with an expression I didn't have a clean word for. Not guilt exactly, something more like recalculation. She asked once, quietly, while she was mashing, "Where did you stay last night?" "The Hartwell Inn," I said. She stopped mashing for a second. "That place is expensive." "It's a lovely place," I said. She went back to mashing. Marcus came in around 3, when the turkey smell had spread through the whole house, and the children were drawing at the kitchen table, and the baby was asleep in the portable crib, and things had settled into the particular warmth of a house where a real meal is being made. He stood in the kitchen doorway the way Lena had stood earlier. "Mom," he said, "you didn't have to do all this." I looked at my son. He's 43. He has his father's eyes, and my habit of taking on too much, and not asking for help until it's too late. "Merry Christmas, Marcus," I said. He came in and started setting the table without being asked, which is the most he's ever voluntarily contributed to a meal in his adult life, and I took that as the apology it probably was. Dinner was good. The turkey came out well, which it always does if you know what you're doing, and the potatoes were smooth enough for the baby, who ate 3 spoonfuls and looked very pleased with himself about it. Sophia told a joke she'd clearly been saving for the right audience. Eli showed me a card trick he'd been practicing since his birthday. Jenna's husband Derek, who I'd met twice, turned out to have grown up in the same city as my sister Pat, and we talked about that for 20 minutes. It was, in the way of complicated family Christmases, actually fine. Lena was quiet through most of it, quieter than usual, which is saying something because Lena is not generally a quiet person. She laughed at the right moments and passed things when asked, but she was somewhere inside her own head, in a way I recognized as a woman doing math. After dinner, after the children had been fed, and the baby had been put down, and Marcus and Derek had attempted, and largely failed to do the dishes, Lena came and sat beside me on the couch, where I'd settled with a cup of tea. She sat there for a moment, without saying anything. Then she said, "I owe you an apology." I looked at her. "For the garage," I said. "For the garage," she said. There was a longer pause. "I told myself it made sense logistically," she said. "Jenna has the kids, and they need space, and the garage has heat. I told myself you'd understand." She stopped. I think I knew it wasn't right when I was saying it, and I said it anyway. I set my tea down. "Lena," I said, "can I tell you what I thought about after I made that reservation last night?" She looked at me. "I thought about the year Marcus's father died," I said. "That was 4 years ago. That Christmas I drove here by myself because I didn't want to be alone, and you made up the guest room with the good sheets, and you put a poinsettia on the nightstand. You didn't make a big thing of it. You just did it." She was very still. "That's who you are," I said. "What happened yesterday wasn't you at your best. It happens, but I'm telling you this because I'd rather you know I remember the poinsettia than think I only remember the garage." She didn't say anything for a while. Then she said, "I should have remembered it too." "Yes," I said, "you should have." I stayed that night, in the guest room, the good sheets. I want to be honest about the rest of it, because I'm not telling this story to make anyone into a villain. Lena is not a villain. She made a thoughtless, unkind decision under the pressure of a crowded Christmas and didn't think it through, and made it worse by not catching herself in time. That's a human thing. I've made unkind decisions I wasn't proud of. Most people have. What I want you to take from this is not Lena is terrible. It's something quieter than that. Here is the thing nobody tells you about being the person in the family who makes things work. The person who drives 3 hours with a casserole. Who knows where the good sheets are? Who can look at a kitchen on Christmas afternoon with a frozen turkey and no pie and figure out what to do? Nobody tells you that being that person is invisible until you leave. Everyone assumes the dinner will happen, the way they assume the lights will come on when they flip the switch. They don't think about what's behind the switch. When I drove away that night with my bag in the car, the house didn't have a dinner. It had a turkey in packaging and a pie that didn't exist. The switch got flipped, and the lights didn't come on, and only then did anyone think about what was behind the switch. I'm not telling you this to feel important. Importance isn't the point. The point is this. If the people in your life have started treating what you contribute as automatic, as the wallpaper of their holiday, rather than a gift you're choosing to give them, that's a signal worth paying attention to. Not loudly. You don't have to announce anything. You just have to stop for one night and let the lights stay off. Sometimes that's the only way anyone finds the switch. I drove home on the 27th. Before I left, Marcus helped me carry the casserole dish to the car. We stood by my car in the driveway in the cold for a minute. He had his hands in his coat pockets, and his breath made small clouds. He looked like he had something to say, and was taking his time finding it. "Next year, the guest room is yours before anyone else gets it," he said. "Thank you," I said. "I should have said something when Lena brought it up," he said. "I should have said it then, not after." I looked at my son. 43 years old, gray coming in at his temples, the same expression he's had since he was a boy, when he knows he's gotten something wrong and is trying to decide how to say so. You know what I've noticed about you your whole life? I said. He waited. You always get there, I said. Maybe not first, but you get there. He nodded slowly, not satisfied with himself, but accepting it. I'm sorry, Mom, he said. About the garage. About not saying something. I know, I said. We hugged. He went inside. I drove home. My room at the Hartwell Inn cost me $240. I would spend it again 10 times over. Not because it was a beautiful room, though it was. Not because the breakfast was excellent, though it was. Because in that room on Christmas Eve I slept 8 hours and called my sister until 11 and ate soup and cake in bed and opened a gift and read my book and remembered something I'd been forgetting for a while. That my comfort is part of the accounting too. Not instead of everyone else's. Not more than the grandchildren or the dinner or the family, but included, part of what gets considered when the rooms are being assigned and the decisions are being made. A cot in a garage is a very clear message. It says, your comfort is the thing we sacrifice when space runs short. It says, you're the one who adjusts. Some women in my position would have taken the cot, would have told themselves it was fine, it was temporary, it wasn't worth making an issue, and I understand that. I've spent a lot of years not making issues. There is a kind of love in that, a generosity of spirit, a willingness to absorb the discomfort so that other people don't have to. But there's a difference between generosity and invisibility, between choosing not to make a fuss and accepting that your comfort doesn't count. One is a gift you're giving. The other is a role you've been assigned without being asked. I chose the fireplace. I chose it without a speech, without an argument, without making anyone feel guilty in the moment. I just packed my bag and made a reservation and said I'd see them tomorrow. And tomorrow I showed up. I cooked the dinner. I held the baby. I watched Sophia do her card trick and told Eli his joke was the best joke I'd heard all year, even though it wasn't. I sat at the table and passed the gravy and was exactly the grandmother and mother-in-law I have always been. Nothing was lost by the one night I chose the fireplace. Some things were found. If you are the person who drives 3 hours with the casserole, and you know who you are, because you're the one who's already thinking about what needs to be done before anyone else has started, subscribe to this channel. Every story here is for you. Hit subscribe. And here is what I'd want you to carry from this story. Just one thing, plain as I can say it. The people who depend on you will not always see what you contribute until you stop contributing it. That's not cruelty. It's just the way invisibility works. The lights are on, and nobody thinks about the switch. You don't have to leave to make a point. You don't have to make a scene. You just have to, once in a while, choose the fireplace, choose the room with the good sheets, choose the 8 hours of sleep and the phone call with your sister and the eggs Benedict in the morning, and then go back. Cook the dinner, hold the baby, be there. Because that's who you are. It's just that who you are deserves a fireplace too. My name is Carol. I spent Christmas Eve at the Hartwell Inn, and I have never, not once, regretted choosing the fireplace.